Good evening and warm welcome to all the participants. We are overjoyed today. We are joined by Mr. Ramesh Krishnamurthi, the IRS officer, and he's already joined. Please welcome him. Sir, good evening and welcome to this 190th leadership conversation. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us and sparing your time. A hearty welcome to you, sir. I will do a brief introduction and then hand it over back to you for your opening remarks, sir. So allow me to share my screen. These are WiseViews leadership conversations that we hold every Friday, and we have reached session number 190. And this session will be led by Mr. Ramesh Krishnamurthi, as I mentioned. This introduction and opening remarks will be for about 20-25 minutes. After that, we'll have the Q&A in two clusters. Roughly about 1 hour is budgeted for the whole session. I take pleasure and to introduce Mr. Ramesh. These are the slides that we have. Shri Ramesh Krishnamurthi is a 1992 batch Indian Revenue Service officer. He holds a BTech from IIT BHU Varanasi, an MBA from IIM Kolkata, and a Master of Science in Finance from Texas A&M University, USA. His research at Texas A&M focused on supply chain management and various other things. Before assuming the charge of Central PF Commissioner, which he is holding currently, he was holding the charge of Additional Secretary, Ministry of Labor and Employment. His extensive experience in economic affairs and taxation with his leadership roles in the Ministry of Labor and Employment and EPFO highlight his significant contributions to India's public administration. During his time at Income Tax, he led policy and technical initiatives for centralized processing and electronic filing of income tax returns, shaping future system requirements. He also designed and managed the Centralized Processing Center, CPC, in Bangalore. I'm sure all are familiar with CPC, processing millions of returns, and the electronic filing project for online tax submissions. Thank you, sir. I will also introduce Dr. R. Prasad. Dr. R. Prasad is the Senior Director, Academic Wing at ICFAI Group. He brings with himself 3 decades of rich experience as an entrepreneur, as a corporate professional, and as an academic now. He holds BTech from IIT Bombay and PGDM from IIM Kolkata. For your information, Dr. Prasad and Sri Ramesh Krishnamurthy were classmates at IIM Kolkata, and you should thank me for this reunion, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's all, sir, is the brief introduction to a very big man. We are extremely delighted, sir, to have you. I want to remind you that people from all around the country have joined this evening to listen to you. And there are leaders from various sectors like education, technology, entrepreneurship, and some of them from NGO sector, social sector as well. So we are all eagerly waiting to listen to you, sir. And please start your opening remarks. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much once again.
So first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Sudhakar and Dr. Prasad, for having me on this program, which is extremely, I would say, interesting and inspiring that you already have 190 sessions before my session. So I'm very glad to be here with you all. And so without further ado, I would start my presentation, but I thank you for the introduction and giving me the opportunity to be with you at this particular point of time. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone, and very warm welcome to this session. My name again is Ramesh Krishnamurthi. Presently, I am the Central Provident Fund Commissioner of the Employees Provident Fund Organization. I head EPFO. I have been in this role in a full-time capacity from November of 2024. So it has just been about 5 months since I've been in this organization. And prior to that, I was Additional Secretary, as was mentioned, in the Ministry of Labor and Employment. I belong to the Indian Revenue Service, Income Tax Services, 1992 batch. So this topic today that this is something that was asked, and I thought that this is something that I can share with you all, relates to challenges in implementation of e-governance initiatives. So since I have been a part of the e-governance initiatives in income tax, I thought I can share with you some of my experiences and how some of them can be overcome and how we can learn from them. Of course, everyone who's participating, if they've already had some experience, maybe they may have different kind of, I would say, learnings or advice that they may also be sharing with others. This is my perspective. So very quickly in my presentation, since I've been asked to try to keep it to about 20 minutes of my presentation, followed by Q&A. So these are the construct of my the topics that I'll discuss today. One is what have I done in e-governance space, and then the second is the challenges in the implementation of e-governance programs. In that, I'll cover the initial conceptualization and design of the program, converting ideas to requirements, getting the financial model right, development blues, that is when you start developing software, program gets underway, what are the issues? And then the O&M phase, when you start getting into regular routine work, what are the issues that come up? Some of the issues relating to contract management, payment, penalty issues, and then I'm going to discuss what happens when it is time for closure of the contract period, and when you are approaching the end of the contract. And then lastly, while all of this may be coming from my perspective, I'm just sharing with you what I got feedback from the other side, that is the vendor or the managed service provider or the person who's executing some of these e-governance contracts. What do they feel? What do they go through? So this is what I'll cover in brief during my talk. So a background about what I started working in income tax department. This was in the year 2006, when the first, I would say, the major e-governance initiative that I was a part of. You may recall that sometime in the year 2004, the permanent account number, that is the PAN card, was outsourced by the department. And then that also was followed up by electronic payment of income tax challans. Earlier, you used to go to a bank counter to pay, but then the electronic challans became possible. That is how payments started getting received. So these were two initiatives that happened in 2004. But then I came into the picture in 2006, that is why I'm calling it e-filing 0.1, because it was a precursor to the main e-filing program. But then, just to give you a background, in 2006-07, the government said that for corporates, it is going to make electronic filing mandatory. And this came out of a requirement that corporates are fairly sophisticated. They have good, I would say, backing in terms of their HR, payroll, and other departments or tax departments. So they are quite okay and equipped to start electronic filing. So it was a top-down kind of an approach where we thought that maybe it could be starting with that. Of course, here the entire program was managed in-house by the departmental people. We used to run our data center, a small data center out of a small room in the back of our office space. And everything was managed by us. But then we started realizing that that is not enough. And then that is how the centralized processing of income tax returns came up. I'll share a bit more details. But this was our landmark and our, I would say, key project of the income tax department, which we call CPC 1.0. This happened in the year 2009. This was followed by the third program which I was associated with, which was the electronic filing of income tax returns 1.0, which is the main, I would say, the starting point when actually it took off, the e-filing part, which was in 2012. In between, I also handled something called the income tax business applications, ITBA 1.0, which is computerization of the internal applications of the department, which was used by departmental officers. A lot of you may have heard of e-proceedings and faceless assessment. So that was a part of the ITBA 1.0 program, where officers within the department could interact with people outside through the electronic interface, even in cases of scrutiny or investigations. And the last e-governance project I was a part of was the 2.0 version, when the e-filing and CPC were converged. And this was launched in 2021 in the middle of COVID. So these are some of the projects that I was associated with. And I would say that one thing I can definitely say is that It does all these programs. Now we are 15 years since the first big project, which is CPC. And now we can say that, okay, it has matured and it has yielded its results and outcome. But it does take time. So e-governance projects, though we think that it will deliver results immediately, but it does take time. And I've been fortunate that I've been associated with this, except for a brief gap of about 3 years. From 2006 to 22, I was in some way or other associated with all these programs. So the first thing that I would like to talk about is the conceptualization phase, which is the part or the starting time for the e-governance initiative and what is the big idea. So this is very critical for any e-governance initiative. Unless you know what is the problem that you're going to solve, I don't think you will be able to succeed. So in the case of electronic filing, there was a mix of a legislative intent. That is, the government wanted to say that, okay, we are moving away from the manual to the electronic filing environment. We want to mandate it. And then obviously there was this issue of, ease of living. That is the comfort of anytime, anywhere filing. And if you recall in the past, now I think the younger generation would never know, but the earlier generation, I'm talking about pre-2000, I mean, even say 2014 and prior to that, there used to be this concept of return filing mailers. Every income tax office used to put up shamianas, and we used to, in Delhi, we used to hire Pragati Maidan. The big halls, the exhibition halls were hired. They would set up multiple counters, and every counter there was a long queue. People towards the last week of filing would queue up and file their paper returns. So this image was a negative image of the income tax department. And also as a result of paper filing, there used to be mountains of paper within the department. In terms of the entire working space of the department, it was unhealthy and I would say a kind of an image which is typical for any bureaucracy, which is a lot of files piled up in the office space. So the big trigger here was that we wanted to move from the manual method to the electronic method, and we wanted to give the comfort to the tax filer that you can file from anywhere, anytime, at the comfort of your home, instead of having to stand in the queue. As far as CPC was concerned, it was born out of business process reengineering. As I said, very paradoxically, the e-filing initiative was started in 2006. And we thought that, okay, e-filing we have achieved and we have started. But then the funny part of it was that our departmental people were not used to seeing anything other than paper. So they would process all the paper returns first, and then the electronically filed returns would be last in the queue. Whereas we thought that that would be first in the queue because there is no data entry involved. All the data is already entered. So it will be a very simple thing for people to process. But it was exactly the other way around. And then we realized that by nature, our people are not used to handling paper electronic returns. They've never seen anything on the computer screen. So then we launched what we call the business process reengineering project. We tried to understand what are the functions which can be performed in a back office. The bulk and repetitive functions were taken out, and they were all focused in a single location at Bangalore for processing. The second thing that we tried to solve is that while e-filing per se was very good, and which is true for many of the government departments even today, that the front end always gets computerized. You receive an application online, but at the back end, you replicate all the manual processes. So then you are never giving an end-to-end solution. So what we decided to do is that we have to ensure that there is an end-to-end solution, that right from the filing till the time of the refund issuance, it all has to be in a back office environment. And the key objectives were speed, reliability, and consistency. Speed means turnaround time. Reliability means that instead of two different officers, one taking 2 days, another taking 30 days, everyone's return is taken in the first in, first out basis. The third important thing was consistency, that there is no interpretational issue. It is all a national rule, the single rule that is applied, whether it is Guwahati or a Calcutta return, doesn't matter. It is all processed by the same set of rules. in a national basis. So these were the objectives. So as I said, the first figure, the first key thing that we have to understand in any e-governance initiative is that highlight what is the problem we are going to solve. Unless you have a clear picture of this, it will be very difficult for any subsequent stages, because then you don't have clarity on the objectives. Second thing is that, okay, you may have a lot of good ideas and you already know what is the problem to be solved. But then how do you convert that into a requirement document, and how do you convert that into reality? So the first step is to bring everything down in writing. So this is some of the one thing that we learned very early. I think I'm talking about 2007, when we were trying to do CPC. We implemented something called an Oracle's rules engine, which was the first time trying to codify what was the income tax law into a series of code. That is a rules-based engine was used as the authoring tool to formulate all the law into a set of rules. And we did a pilot, we did a POC, we ran about 95,000 income tax returns to see whether it was giving us the results that we wanted. So once we got that comfort and satisfaction that yes, this is the way in which we can do it, then actually we were able to move forward. So even in our RFP, we had actually put the entire results of our POC, the time it took, what were the rules that we implemented, all those things were a part of the RFP. So the requirement document, or the request for proposal document, or the tender document, whatever way you want to call it, I think that is absolutely critical, and you have to make sure that as domain experts, unless we put down everything in writing and we are very clear about what we want to achieve, I think that knowledge, implicit knowledge that we have, doesn't get translated to explicit knowledge, and doesn't come to the awareness of everyone who is an external stakeholder. So writing out functional documents is extremely critical. And one of the things that we thought of at that time is also that we have to think big, plan big and comprehensive. That is, when you are talking about e-governance projects, they are all affecting the entire country. So we have to plan in such a way that we are taking all our future requirements also into consideration. Maybe not all of them would be achievable at the first go, but at least we should have that perspective. And at that time, by that time, we had come to the conclusion that, earlier in our e-filing project, while the return itself was submitted electronically, we would require that every taxpayer would go to the income tax department and file a paper copy or a printout of that electronic return. So it was not at all efficient. It was absolutely redundant exercise that we were asking them to do. But the reason for doing that was that we wanted to capture his, signature. That is, we wanted for him to say that whatever I have submitted is a valid, and it will hold up in any court of law. Because of that requirement, we were wanting him to submit the return itself. But then very quickly we said, okay, can we simplify it? And so that is how we came up with a one-page, what is called an ITR verification form. A lot of people used to say it is ITR 5, the Roman V. But then it is an ITR verification form which said that I've already submitted the return. Here is a one-page signed document which I'll send to CPC by post, and that is barcoded, so it is easy to scan and confirm that it has been received. And that is a process re-engineering that we did. But all this was not done earlier. It was not known earlier. But it was not even something that was something which is new. Even today, I think we took the idea from US IRS. So US IRS, if once you file a paper return, you have to submit a one-page form. I think it's called 8843 or 8849 or 8879. And we copied that idea from there. That is how we had visualized. And then, as many of you are aware, in 2015, we were the first in the country to initiate Aadhaar-based e-sign as a substitute to a paper filing. So what I'm saying is that these are things that you have to plan upfront. Not everything was done upfront, of course. Some of these were work progress as we went through it. But then if you are able to put it in writing, then everyone is guided by that same thought. And what is critical is that all this domain knowledge is within. That is, the organization which is having that e-governance initiative, that team must say what is my requirement. Consultants can help, but they cannot, always supplement, or they cannot. They can only supplement, but they cannot substitute your domain knowledge. As I said, no need to reinvent the wheel, but the writing of this entire requirement document, in my view, is extremely critical. The SLAs also must be born out of your experience as to what you think are very critical factors which you want to make sure that you are able to monitor. Now, the other important point is that once you've got the requirements and all that, how do you, build out the program? How do you do the financial modeling, and how do you make sure that we are able to get good quality bids? Most of the government projects are on a lowest cost basis, L1. But now many projects use a QCBS method. We were one of the first in the department to try to innovate, and we were very blessed to get good guidance from the private sector. When we talked to, at that time, I remember in 2007 and 2008, we took the help of banks. There were CTOs of ICFAI Bank and SDFC Bank we have consulted, and a very dear colleague, Ashish Chauhan, who's the MD of NSE now. These three people are part of our advisory committee. And they said, why do you want to get into this business of trying to size the hardware and software, manpower requirements and all that? Why can't you let the private sector do it? Because they are the best place to do that. So in this, in CPC, we were the first to reduce everything to a transaction-based pricing. That is per return processed. We said that we will take a quote from the bidders, and that is how we did the bidding of the CPC, but we did it on an L1 basis. The advantage of that was that it became very easy to compare bids, number one. But it was very tough for the vendors, because the vendors had to crunch all these costs down and reduce it to a guesswork as to on volumes and volumetrics and modeling on what will be a viable return to them and things like that. So it was difficult for them, but we used the blended all-in cost. So we used a single return processing as the cost basis, and the entire risk was borne by the vendor. So the upside is that if you get higher volumes, you get more profits, but if you get lower volumes, you may end up, in a loss. But because, of course, thankfully in our case, it is a statutory requirement of return filing, we were more or less assured of some, I would say, volume, but we couldn't predict the increase or shortfall at that particular point of time. I have seen many tenders that fail because the financial bid formats are not structured properly. If you have too many line items, then it becomes difficult to compare bids. So where you're comparing unequals, somebody may have bid very high on manpower but very low on software license and vice versa. Then you don't know whether you can compare these bids or not. Last point is that you can build in incentives in the SLA and in performance to encourage the vendor. So ideally, you must have a win-win kind of a situation. Otherwise, you will not get good quality bids. Then the critical part is the development time. And again and again, in almost all projects, I have seen this, that if your clarity is there in the requirement document, then you'll have less of a complication, because what happens is when actually somebody starts to implement, then there's so many queries that come up. Is it this way? Is it that way? Is there an exception? How do you handle this exception? So somebody has to be there to respond. And from a team perspective, what I've seen is that the solution architect from the vendor is the key role. He is I would say, the entire planning of the solution. If he has done the architecting properly, it is the same thing as a building architect, right? If he has planned out each and every requirement, if he knows that this is the final, he also has conceptualized the building. The building is not yet ready, but he has conceptualized the building. If he has done a good job, then obviously the building will be beautiful, the same year. Now I have, in most of my later projects, this issue came up, agile development versus a traditional development, where you write down all the requirements, give it to a team, and then ask them to develop and test. And vis-a-vis an agile development. This agile is, according to me, is more of a myth, and I would say it is not worked out properly, because you're neither here nor there. And quite frankly, I've been quite disappointed with the premise and the promise of agile development, and finally it is neither. But the new methods, I think, are much more, I think, fruitful. That is using Figma, where the screen development and you have a dummy, all the things that you are shown are a series of screens, and the process flows are all dummy flows are all made. So it's very easy for somebody to visually see what is going to happen, and that becomes much more easier rather than an abstract. So that I think is a very positive thing. And as I said, during implementation, so many clarifications are sought. So your domain team must be available. It must be fully empowered. It must be fully capable of answering all the questions. The consultant is important. Quality of project planning and documentation, that is how good you prepare the documents for requirement, is extremely critical. And one thing I have found that our government, usually in most government departments, people are extremely reluctant to sign off on any document because they are very worried that if I sign off and then some new requirement comes and then the vendor says that this was not a part of the paper that you signed off, and now it's a change request. So then the people are extremely wary of this, and they keep on delaying the sign off and approvals so that at any point of time you can add more requirements. I think this causes a lot of delay, so this must be avoided. But on the other side, the flip side of that is that no government project operates in isolation. There are so many things, and particularly income tax is so dynamic. Every year there is a tax law change and the rules are changing. So it becomes extremely tough for any project to avoid any kind of scope creep or a dynamic environment or changes can be avoided. You have to make sure that you are able to, you can't tell the parliament or your CBDT saying that, look here, my project is underway. Till the time the project finishes, don't make any legislative changes. That is not possible. So you have to be prepared for these kind of changes, and likewise, the vendor also has to be sensitized to this. So this is one important aspect during development time, that within the 12 to 18 months that it takes to develop the project, there are so many changes that are happening. Then once the development is over, I'm assuming that the testing is done and the project has rolled out. One of the things that I've usually seen is that the go live never happens on on the scheduled date. There's always a delay, partially because of all the reasons that I mentioned. Nobody gives you sign off, testing gets delayed. There are bugs and there are issues in the entire development cycle, which causes some modules to be ready. So always this decision happens. Dilemma is there whether you had a go live planned with say 10 modules, but only 6 are ready. Do you stick to that go live date? Is it something that you can run with it? In many cases, I have had to take a decision saying that it's okay. 2 modules did not get delivered. We will do whatever is required, like a penalty or something like that. But at least the 8 modules, let us go live with it. So these are some things that have to be considered, and because in case of income tax, it becomes even more difficult because it's not things are not static. For example, one of the things that we found extremely challenging in the 2021 rollout was that it was no longer a greenfield project. It was a regular running program. So I had to have a cutover. My cutover period, I thought, was the logical time to cut over was March 31st, when the previous year ended and the new year started. But we were in the middle of COVID. A lot of delays happened. Now, by the time there was a lot of pressure being built that you are approaching the July 31st timeline, but you've not rolled out your income tax returns. So because of all these kind of issues, we had to, sometimes we have to take calls and rush. These are a lot of implications because of this. The other thing that we typically see during the O&M phase is that the solutions team has moved out. There is changes in the vendor also. But most importantly, the project team, that is the domain team or the departmental team, also undergoes very frequent change, mostly at the top level as well. They come in with new ideas and new priorities and things like that. During the O&M phase, there are issues which is extremely important, that in the 4 or 5 years that you're doing O&M, many legislative changes, requirement changes happen, operational changes happen with a different set of political masters, as well as change in the hierarchy. Their priorities may change. In many e-governance projects, we have seen that they get deprioritized. and the vendor is stuck. And he's saying that, okay, this was a very important project. I spent in so much of money, but now nobody is even taking a look at this project. So that is important. Lastly, during the O&M phase is the time when everything becomes very dull. There is project fatigue. There may be requirements for course correction. If you look at it from the positive standpoint, there may be many innovations that you could have brought in, and you have done that. But on the flip side, if the objectives are not being met, many examples are like that are there, which have failed because objectives are not met. So then nobody takes interest in those kind of projects. And then feedback from the stakeholders are not very good. So a lot of complications, and then you have problems. A typical example I have seen many times, it has been started as single window clearance projects. Typically after the initial, high visibility and all that, it starts to fade away because that single window never remains a single window, because then all the other stakeholders keep on asking for additional documents and all that. And then nobody wants to, go to the single window, because anyway they have to comply separately to the other departments which are a part of the single window, but they're not operating in a cohesive way. So all these projects have sort of collapsed. So this is something that is worrisome during the O&M phase. Lastly, during this time is when all these payment issues start coming up. Typically, because of delays, milestones may have not been met. Outputs and outcomes are less than favorable. SLAs, typically MIS and SLAs have always been a casualty, because they are finalized at the end, because you keep on changing your the calculation methodology for SLA and things like that. They don't get measured properly, and as a result, what happens is that when it comes to making a payment, your SLA is not ready, so you can't make any commitments on the basis of whether there should be any deduction or not. So these are all issues that come up at the time of payment, and it delays payment. Now, the other thing that I have seen is that typically when it comes to the project bidding part, the vendors will bring their best people to the table. But during the development and definitely during the O&M time, they'll be pulled out of the project and put in different other projects which are probably getting initiated. And then the team that is left behind is not up to the mark. And this issue of delay attribution, that is, this delay, vendor will say, you did not give me approvals, so I couldn't finish it in time. I will say that, you did not give me a quality product. How could I sign off on a poor document or a poor product? So this always happens. You and me, it keeps on getting, and the impact is that finally the payments get delayed, and it has got a multiple ripple effect. And then the issue becomes, in most of the e-governance projects, there is some kind of penalty implication. And nobody in government wants to condone any penalty, because they have an audit, you have vigilance, you have multiple set of approvals. So in decision making in government, to kind of condone any penalty is extremely tough to make. So it is better to avoid this by having very senior level reviews right up front, so that you don't land up in a kind of a situation where you are having to take a decision to levy a penalty, because levy of a penalty has a very extremely negative implication on the vendor personnel. Their salary gets impacted and the cash flows get impacted. So all those other issues are there. So it's better to have very good reviews at regular intervals by senior management to mitigate risk. Now, as I said, sooner or later, every contract, every project has to end. But then in government, we never plan for that. What happens is that by the time the O&M phase is nearing its end, the project team would have gone. The new project team would be just getting getting their hands dirty. They would be trying to understand the project. So they don't start work on the new RFP, or if they have to take a decision on extension, they have not started any decision making yet. And typically, I have seen that the entire tendering process in government takes at least 12 months, if not more. Development and deployment of any project takes about 12 to 18 months. So that means about close to 2 years to 2.5 years. If you're starting a new project, you must have started your planning from the end of the project, working backwards, nearly 2.5 years earlier, and it is never done. And this leads to some kind of a panic at the last minute that, okay, now I have no go other than to get an extension of the contract. The vendor is also not very clear whether he is going to get an extension or not. So he has already started to put his team in other projects and all that. So it becomes a complete mess at the time when you're trying to end a contract. And the transition planning is also not very smooth. Even if you've done everything at the right time, the new vendor has to come. He has to take over from the old vendor. This is extremely complex, even in the private sector. So in the government, it's even more so, where the old vendor and the new vendor do not, work together. They're always fighting against each other, and you are put in the middle as a referee. However, on the positive side, the 2.0 becomes a new opportunity for you, new requirements and outcomes that could not have been visualized or could not have been met are all something that you would want to do in the 2.0 program. So all in all, project when it ends, it's a time for a new start also. That is also a good thing. A lot of departments, including income tax, what they have done is that we have now started doing a new project team. So we don't mix up the old and the new. The old team continues, and then there's a new team which is focusing on 2.0. So that is also one technique in which to avoid delays and all that. So that is something that has been done. Now, if you look at it from the other side, so I've just told you what were the issues that I have seen during the entire life cycle of the entire e-governance initiative. But if you look at it from the vendor side, he says when you come out with your requirements are so complex. You want everything in the world in this contract, but you don't want to pay me so much. So there are so many ambiguities in the project terms that I don't know what to do. So sometimes in the bidding time, I take shortcuts, and then or I do not point out some of the loopholes, or I do not apprise every query is not answered properly. I don't give any clarification. So my submissions are also a bit vague, and that haunts the project later. And vendors have a tough time, with whether it is the project team, availability of the project team, negotiating all the terms. All the terms, typically the vendors that they will always say is that your government contract terms are all one-sided. They put extreme requirements on the vendors. And then lastly, when the project is actually going on, by the time, as I said, it's a necessity. There are too many changes. Different stakeholders have got different timelines and expectations. The senior management will say, give me a dashboard immediately. Whereas the project team is trying to say, at least let me get my requirements completed. The fourth point is very important. As I said, typically, we have seen that payments do not come for long periods of time. It affects the cash flow of the project. And it really, I've seen so many times it happens that the vendor team is extremely, disheartened and frustrated because their management is scolding them that payments have not come. So any request for additional manpower is all shot down. Their salary increments are not given in time, and in many cases they stagnate. So nobody has an interest in the project anymore. So these are some of the challenges from the vendor side. Of course, on the positive side, large e-governance projects like income tax, passport, MCA 21, they have got such a, I would say, completely world-changing kind of impact that vendors who have worked on this, they really have gain a lot of experience. They are able to showcase and leverage these contracts for bagging other deals. So this is the flip side of it, but it is any e-governance project is extremely tough on both sides, on the government as well as the vendor to navigate. So I hope I've taken a lot of time, but I hope I've tried to give you a flavor of what goes on within the government setup when it comes to income tax, at least from an income tax perspective, but this may be true almost in all e-governance initiatives. So with that, I close my presentation. I'm thankful for you all to take the time to listen to me, and I'm open to questions now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. That's a fantastic lowdown on how big projects are managed. So it's a life cycle of project management in a nutshell that you have provided. More so, it is in the government sector. On top of it, the subject is consumer facing related business. And additionally, the dynamics are very different because it could be sensitive. A lot of people have an opinion on this. Even though they don't have domain knowledge, they'll have an opinion on this because it is customer facing, because they are affected by it. Although luckily in this case, some of them or most of them visit this once in a year. Although the back end, you people work on it on a daily basis or continuously you people be working on it. But the comments will be restricted to that extent. The challenges will be restricted to that extent. But what I have seen, sir, is that there's a lot of pain in creating and building such a project. But at the end of it, there's a huge satisfaction of making it so easy and transparent also for the consumers to log on to and file their returns and deal with the authorities. I think once we reach that stage, there's a great satisfaction both sides. Thank you so much for providing us this introduction. And I think we would have had no chance to know about what was happening behind the scenes all these years. But for your presentation, through your presentation, we came to know all these. And in summary, I think it is many times, or most of the times, it is management of changes and sometimes changes in management also throughout the project life cycle. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I would like to thank you for this presentation, and I'll request Dr. R. Prasad to come in for the first cluster of Q&A. We are at 4:45. We'll try our best to take borrow additional time from sir. Sir, project overrun, you will have to bear with us.
I'm also sorry, we have overshot the time allotted, but very tough as this
Yes.
entire thing is so complex that I think I would have done injustice if I had not covered. I mean, there's so many things which I've still not said, but it is tough to compress everything in this time.
Correct, sir. Thank you, sir. Professor Prasad.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Rao. Thanks, Ramesh, for giving us a wonderful use case. That was one of the questions, and you've done it in the presentation. And I think you've covered a very broad spectrum. So I'll try to aggregate the questions which are there to save some time. And the first question I have is related to the system learning. As an individual, you would have brought in a lot of ideas. Perhaps, there are practices from other parts of the world you've brought in. So how does the system learn? I mean, what have you picked up from where, and how did you build this up when there was nothing like that before?
As I said, I think the genesis and obviously the income tax department has been behind in terms of computerization as compared to many of the OECD or advanced countries in the West. As I said, I at least personally had a lot of learning from the US system. Though US in terms of electronic filing, I would say that they were laggards. But in terms of their overall processes, in terms of their, I think, user manuals, the instruction sheets, they are far, far ahead of us in terms of their, clarity and the depth. So there are many countries like Singapore, Australia, who have done excellent work even prior to us, and then they continue to be at the forefront. Of course, from an Indian perspective, CPC was, I think, the concept of centralized processing is not unknown. I think it is. We borrowed a lot of ideas from the banking sector. If you remember, early 2000s were the time when actually the banks exploded in terms of their, re-engineered processes. I personally visited the back offices of ICFAI Bank and HDFC Bank, where they would be processing, I don't know, probably everyone knows now, but most of the checkbooks or, the loan account processing and all that earlier used to happen at the branch. But then these private sector banks were the first which moved all these services to their back office. They would only take the request in the front office, but the actual dispatch of the checkbook and loan processing and all would happen at the back end. So when we started studying this, we realized that they are really leveraging the economies of scale, and by doing that, they are bringing that consistency, the kind of customer service that is required. I think that has to be done only in a controlled environment. I think one of the learnings for me is that, and that is the beauty of the CPC system, is that we have a small team of only about 55 to 60 officers of the department. Of course, we have the manpower from the managed service provider team, which is in the number of, say, 400 to 500. But overall, I would say nearly 9 crore returns are processed at CPC in a very seamless manner by the small manpower of 450 people, which earlier was spread across nearly, 750 offices of the income tax department. So the beauty is to leverage economies of scale, use technology for business transformation, and learn from what people have done successfully otherwise. I gave you the example of banks. So this is how I think we started working on it. Of course, we also did a lot of innovations, but particularly I think we were the first to introduce Aadhaar e-sign as a legitimate basis for signature. We were also one of the first pioneers of, I don't know how many people have used, but we pioneered something called a net banking login. That is, you could go to the your bank account, internet bank account login of the bank, and from there, using your tax, I would say, sub-menu, you could land up in the income tax department website. Now, this kind of a redirect using what I would call a federated identity management. I was sure that this person is X because he was coming through a trusted partner like a bank. So these are some of the concepts that we were able to pioneer. And now I think more or less it's quite common that it's almost like a single sign-on, but it is across two different entities. It is not within your entity. So these are some of the things that we've learned, and I think the learning never stops. We'll keep going ahead. For example, this entire concept of the annual information statement, that is now income tax is able to show what are the income, the interest income, the dividend income, if you have sold some house property, all those things are now your salary statements. They're all visible to the taxpayer. The reason was that we wanted to trust, and we wanted to move all this to the front end so that you could see what is that the department knows. And then you may have omitted in something just because you didn't keep track of your financial transactions. But then if we are able to pre-fill and we are able to show you, then probably those kind of things will not get missed. So these are some of the things that we have done. We have also learned from many tax administration systems across the world.
Thank you. I think such a large project and the kind of developments which have been there, not just at the beginning from the idea point of view, but what you've added on, which you mentioned in terms of when you finally have to verify the routes that you've taken as well as those additional things. I think they all show a very, perhaps one of the most important things, one of the front runners in terms of what others can also copy from. Thank you very much for that. I'll move to the next question. You have a technocrat background, and how do you? I mean, this is a common question we are very interested in. How do you manage your relationship with political leaders?
So, or to be very honest, in the income tax department, I was in what we call the systems directorate. That is the information technology side of the IT department. And lot of our, I would say 99.9% of the time, I didn't have to interact with any political person at all. It was simply something that was process-driven issues that involved changes in processes and all that. The policy part was handled by our CBDT, which is our Central Board of Direct Taxes. And there, if there was any legislative change or any change that had to be apprised, then that would be the job of the senior management at that time. I was very junior when I started off my e-filing project. So at that time, it was something that, of course, I was a part of the team, and the entire team, which comprised of me, my boss, and the people at Central Board of Direct Taxes. I think what is one more thing I would say is that it's extremely important to have that team across the hierarchy, which believes in that initiative, which believes in that project. And everyone had a role to play. The person at the top, which is the policy making body, once they saw that this is a project that is important and this can be delivered, then that was they focused entirely on making sure that everyone in the political system, in the bureaucratic system, at the senior management in Ministry of Finance were apprised of the benefits and advantages of all the initiatives that we're taking, because the outcomes were starting to come. So it was obviously it sort of built that stakeholder support. But in my present role, where I'm heading the EPFO, obviously the interaction with political masters is very important. And I think the beauty of our Indian democracy and the Indian system is that the political system understands the grassroots requirements. That is, they understand the pulse of the people. We may think otherwise, but it is not true. And I think extremely sensitive to the requirements of the people. The only challenge they face is that how do you translate that into reality? And that is the job of people like us. We have to match that and run with their expectations. So that is where the challenge comes. I think if both sides are in sync, then the outcomes will be much, much better.
Excellent. I think the key point that you brought out is that politicians, in order to, of course, win elections, they need to be in touch with grassroots, and they are doing that. And as long as we are in sync with that, this should not be an issue in very broad terms. Thank you. I think we are at 4:55. I'll give it back to Professor Rao. If there's time later, we'll come back. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad. Sir, I have one fundamental question. In your presentation, you have talked about the objectives like ease of doing business, objectives like making it comfortable for people to file their returns anytime, anywhere filing, so on and so forth. What were the objectives of the government? The other side's objectives were not clear. For example, were there any objectives of increasing the tax net in terms of volumes? If so, were those objectives met? And at what time in the maturity level cycle did we achieve those objectives?
This is coming back to the same question that Prasad answered, Prasad had asked. So from the government side, the pain point was, what was the pain point? The pain point was that returns were not getting processed in time. Refunds were getting delayed. So the citizens' problems were the problems of the government that the government wanted to address. And one of the things that they thought, and which is what was the drivers of the CPC also, is that department using the traditional methods of data entry, and then processing and then issue of refunds in a decentralized level was carrying almost a 1 year backlog of returns. So we would be processing returns the return filed nearly 14 to 18 months back. We would be processing in 2003-4. We were almost carrying forward nearly 1.5 years worth of backlog. Now, ultimately, what happens? Because that leads to so many grievances from the citizen. So the government's viewpoint was very simple. Government wanted to get rid of this problem. They wanted quick disposal of all the returns. And also one of the byproducts was that they also wanted to get rid of this petty corruption. That is, at that point of time, every return that you process, and if there was a refund, there was this perception allegation that you had to pay some money to the postman, to the income tax department, to the clerk to get your refund back. Now, those are all pain points for the government. So the flip side of CPC was that at one stroke, this entire thing went away because we were able to process. Now the processing time is in many cases brought down to 1 day. So you file a return next day or within a week, you are getting your refund into your bank account. There is no intermediary in play. There is no human involvement. So it serves the government's purpose of making sure that there are no grievances. So from the government side, it was more of citizen service. So the citizen service was the primary concern of the government. So ease of doing business is not only a department's call, it is also the government's call.
Fantastic. And the volumes have grown up, sir, in the sense, of course, progressively the numbers will go up. That's a different story. But on a steady state, do you think the numbers have gone up because of the ease of doing business?
Last year, the department has reviewed over 9 I think, if I'm remembering it right, 9.19 crore returns. When we started off CPC and particularly e-filing, we started off with 4 lakh returns. And over the period of time, obviously, it has grown. We do expect a much sharper increase. But then if you see, there are multiple government policy initiatives also of reducing tax rates. A lot of people, now don't have to file returns if it's below the taxable limit. They don't have to file returns. So anybody having a tax, something like income below 3 lakh, 4 lakh, they don't have to file returns anymore. So, but as in any growing economy, the number of tax returns has to increase. So I'm quite sure it'll go up in future as well.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you so much, sir. The other question that I have before I request the members in the audience to raise their hand in case they have any questions is what is the stage of using AI in e-governance initiatives in India currently, sir?
Difficult to say, because I think AI also, I would say, has really evolved. AI was always a buzzword, maybe 3-4 years back or even earlier. But only after these large-scale language models have come in the last 2 years, when actually, AI use cases have exploded. In terms of, I think, avenues that AI can use easily is in pattern matching, particularly in case of compliance, pattern matching, fraud analytics. I think their use cases are increasing. Second big use case is in taxpayer or citizen assistance. Like now, AI, the LLMs have got huge capability to digest a lot of the FAQs, user manuals, law, all kinds of information dump can be given to AI. And then now a chatbot can really be a very intelligent chatbot or an AI-driven chatbot. So those kind of use cases, I think, are increasing a lot. And I think they will really explode now in the present assignment in which I am. And I have already seen that one use case on using for providing customer support in case of any doubt you have in making a claim in EPFO or any query that you have. That kind of context-based replies, I think AI is now quite capable of answering a whole lot of questions. So I think that is one big use case in which we have not done it yet, but I think in future we will be doing it.
Right. Great, sir. Very promising. Thank you, sir. Before I hand it over to Mr. Chainulu, there's one question keyed in by a participant. That is it appropriate to say that some of the developed countries have avoided taking up measures like UPI or electronic voting? What's your perspective on that?
Why should you say avoided? I mean, this I couldn't understand. But I think every country has, there are some countries which are far, far ahead of us. For example, Singapore, most of you already know, it is a concept of a Sing Pass. That is one single sign-on across all government departments, which, for example, in India, we have not been able to achieve. Whereas we have done very well in UPI. Everyone, I think, already knows that China is far, far ahead in terms of electronic payments. Now we have got payments using only your palm or your fingerprint and things like that. There's so many things that they have done. Of course, in India, I think we have done extremely well considering the kind of citizens, literacy of the citizen, the understanding of the citizen, given the state that even a lot of people not having a very smartphone or something like that, even they are able to engage in digital transactions. I think is a extremely great deal. If you see the entire movement of even a vegetable vendor using UPI is extremely good. Now some countries are countries like USA are they're still heavily reliant on credit cards. So these are some of the issues that I think other countries have, but I don't think there is any intent. I mean, I don't know to avoid. I think it is just that different people have evolved differently at different points of time.
Fine, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that perspective. I'll request Mr. Chainulu to speak.
Good evening, sir. Good evening to all of you. Sir, I have two questions. Actually, it is not a question, it is awareness regarding the public Provident Fund. I heard recently withdrawal of Provident Fund, either at the time of retirement or withdrawal for a specific purpose. Is it true without intervention of the employer, the employee can withdraw through online application as per the new rules of the PF?
So in Provident Fund, there are two things. One is that there are multiple stages, particularly when you change employment. Earlier, it used to be that when you wanted to transfer your PF account from one employer, from one MID to another MID, that is member ID, even though you had a common UAN, but your member ID would be different. And that transfer involved approval of the employer. Now we have simplified all that. We have removed the requirement of any kind of approval by the employer. Now, while I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty, the approach that we are following is very simple. We want to make again, from an ease of living perspective, the member has to have full access, easy access to his own account and to have a comprehensive view of all the funds that are in his PF account. So that is one of our key objectives in the process, in the business process reengineering that we are planning to do, we will try to do that. And at the time of retirement, when you're talking about in terms of, either settlement of a pension claim or settlement of any kind of withdrawal claim, some of these requirements which involve, that of employer and all that is going to be revisited. Some of this we've already simplified. Some of this will be simplified even further. The only requirements of getting some kind of a confirmation and all that will arise only in case of a discrepancy. 99% of the cases where there is no issue at all, I think all those will get settled automatically.
Thank you very much, sir. One more question. This is regarding the workman, because I have worked in a government organization where even today, actually, work contracts have been given on contract basis. That is source contracts. So there will be a lot of workers are working on that. Almost all the 80% of the workers are illiterates. So the employer, that is the work contractor, used to exploit the workman. So whether it has been curbed now with the e-governance and other things?
Extremely valid and a good question, but there is no easy answer to this. So when you say has it been curbed, I think that is an ideal state that we all wish and we all want. But I think going ahead in future, we will be using, all these electronic tools that we have. For example, I think more and more you see in India that even at the lowest level, that is why I brought out the example of the vegetable vendor, informal workers. Everyone has now become more and more comfortable with UPI, linkage to a bank account, linkage with a mobile. So as we do this, more and more digitization and digitalization happens, then there is always a trail. And then we will work, I think from the EPFO side, we will work with, all these other intermediaries, whether it is the bank, whether it is NPCI, whether it is UIDI, to make sure that we are able to, make it easy for people to comply and make it easy for people to make their PF contributions in a seamless manner. I think it is incumbent upon us to make the processes simpler and make the laws and regulations simple so that it is easy for people to comply. I think we have to take the first step forward, and then we would expect that on a trust-based system, then the other side, once it finds itself easy to comply, then I think we'll have better compliance. We'll have all these issues that you're pointing out will slowly go away.
No, my first question is linked with the second question. That's where the employer's connection is not there. Then automatically the employee, he himself can withdraw the PF. That is the where that awareness is more required. That's what my feeling. And e-governance will help you in doing this.
Yes, it will help. It will help. And we are moving in that direction where accessibility, that is what I said, where accessibility to knowledge and to the PF accounts, I think that is our topmost priority. I think you will see a lot of changes in that very shortly.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for giving your time. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Sudhakar, sir.
Sir, we have a question on the WhatsApp governance started by Andhra Pradesh government recently. The question is, please suggest measures to protect citizens' privacy in WhatsApp governance, which is citizen-centric.
Unfortunately, I'm not fully aware of what is the WhatsApp governance, but if I can understand the question, if there are any, maybe using WhatsApp, if any complaint is registered by any citizen saying that my electricity is not coming or my water is not coming or there's a pothole in the road, maybe WhatsApp is used as a means of communication of citizens' problems, and that is taken cognizance by the government and actions are taken. So I'm not too sure if there are any privacy issues here, but I am sure that whether it is Andhra Pradesh government or any government, if there is any personally identifiable information, PII, in this correspondence, first of all, I would definitely in EPFO also, I will try to ensure that those kind of PII information to the extent possible is not required to be shared. It is only location. For example, you need to say location of the pothole, or if you have to, obviously for any issue relating to your own house or your residence, you'll have to give the address. But maybe if that address after a particular point of time is either, removed or deleted once the complaint is solved. Maybe that will take care of privacy concerns. But I think it's a two-way street. If you want more and more convenience, unless you give the exact details, like for example, if you have a complaint regarding your PF account, if you don't share your PF account number, I will not be able to solve your problem. So it is a two-way street. So it is to some extent there is some element of sharing information is unavoidable. But I think it is incumbent upon organizations like ours or the government to safeguard the privacy of the citizen.
Yes, sir. It is a two-way street actually. Comfort versus privacy. Sir, what I understand about this WhatsApp governance, which is introduced very recently, it's actually a few days old, which I learned on social media is that, for example, you don't have to go to a government office to get your, say, caste certificate. You don't have to stand in queue there and give an application and wait. So it will be sent to you as a PDF, and you can take printout at your convenience and use it wherever it's applicable. So that such documents, such products, such services are provided on WhatsApp by Government of Andhra Pradesh. That's what I understand.
Okay.
Right, sir. So we are at 5:12, sir. I'll request Professor Prasad if he has any unfinished agenda to come back.
I think there's one question. E-governance always has a bit of, there is an emphasis on transparency. In order to pull more and more people, you need to have that kind of a pull too. At the same time, there is an aspect of security and privacy, and you have different interests which are pulling to see that it is going in one direction or the other. Now, in your stint in various capacities as well as your colleagues in public service, what are the basic principles which are used where you draw the line in decision making in this transparency versus privacy security debate?
Most importantly, I think it is related to sharing of information attributable to any person. So unless it is any other request which is legitimate from any other law enforcement agency, most agencies don't share any information. We may share information on an aggregate basis. Like for example, income tax, we already shared all the data relating to your tax filing in terms of number of in terms of income tax slabs or category of taxpayers like an individual versus a corporate. All those in an aggregated basis are already all available and published in any public domain. But the individual data, if somebody seeks, even in an RTI, we are very wary of sharing that information with anybody else. Of course, in case of a law enforcement, if the request is coming from any other law enforcement agency, maybe with all the due diligence, it is shared. So I think that is uniform across the entire government.
So personal and legal are the two dimensions on which perhaps as of now the decisions are getting made. Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Ramesh, for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you permit me, I think there is one more question from the participants. While registering, they have keyed in this question, and that is, has the investment portfolio of PFO changed over time? How does it affect the return and risk profile?
Of course, it has changed over a period of time. Prior to, for example, 2015, EPFO did not invest in the equity side. And in equity, when I say equity, we have been extremely conservative. We invest only in ETFs, and that too only the index, that is Nifty 50 and Sensex 30. So over a period of time, the pattern of investment has changed. Up to 15% is now permissible to be invested in equity. Very recently, the Central Board of Tax Trustees of EPFO permitted investments in public sector InvITs, that is Infrastructure Investment Trusts. And so that is up to 3% of our overall portfolio we can invest in such infrastructure investment trusts, and that was sponsored by PSUs. So we have done that. So particularly when you look at it from EPFO's perspective, since we handle pension and provident fund, which are old age security, we are always looking for longer tenure or longer duration investment horizon. So more than short term, we are invested in long term, long duration investment opportunities.
Great, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this session and the time that you have spent with us. I think a lot of insight has been given today for all the participants to understand about such a large e-governance project, the story behind the scenes that we have understood today. Thank you so much for providing that insight, sir. And also, patiently responding to all our queries, the queries that we received from our participants and some of the queries that we raised ourselves. So thank you so much for your time, expertise, and energy. On behalf of everyone here at ICFAI, I would like to thank you for your valuable contribution, and we'd like to keep in touch with you and keep learning from you. We'll prepare a summary of the session. It will be prepared by Dr. Ved Purishwar, another classmate of yours. We'll share a summary with you, and once we get your okay, we'll add it to our archives so that others can go there and keep learning from our website as well. Okay, sir. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure and my privilege to be with you all. I hope I've been able to share some of my insights and it has been useful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you on Friday next with another interesting discussion on another new topic from a new leader. And that will be on 18th of April. We'll send the communication and keep reading about some of these e-governance initiatives. You'll be thrilled actually to know. Once you know what's happening behind the scenes, or once you know what's actually happening in the project management area, the pulls and pressures, I think you will appreciate that better in terms of the outcomes as well as in terms of participation. So have a great weekend and a good night.